It's lights out, everybody, and welcome back to the Low Downforce podcast, the four-friend Formula One podcast. And all four of us are here, Josh, Matt, J9, and myself, Ben. And I'm so glad we are because we just witnessed what might be one of the most legendary races that I can remember, the British Grand Prix. It always seems to live up to the hype. We were hyping it up last year. I at least thought it lived up as well. There is so much to unpack, so we got to get right into it. We always do the race rating first, how we feel about it, what we thought. J9, I'm jumping to you first.
Honestly, this was probably one of my favorite races. I think that nothing was predictable, nothing, I rarely was sitting there going, I'm bored. There's not much happening. There was always something happening in this race. I loved it. I'm giving it like
sometimes
an 11.
There was too much happening.
Tuned in the entire time, could not look away.
It was insane. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm with you. I'm going full 10 out of 10. Best race of the year. If you watched it and you don't like Formula One now, the sport's not for you because it really had everything.
Like you said, sport's not for me.
That's crazy. You know what? I'm going to jump to you. We'll come back to me. Go right to you, Josh.
To me, this is the opposite of Austria. Austria had a great McLaren battle at the beginning. They got kind of boring at the end. There were like 3 racing laps through the first 15 laps of this race because everyone kept crashing. There was just safety car on safety car. Safety car would end. We'd have another safety car. That one would end. We'd have another safety car. It was just kind of... Yeah, towards the end, it definitely got better. I'm giving it a 7 overall.
Could you not rate the perfect Haas cars going in sync after a...
That was awesome. That was
synchronized spinning.
Aura farming.
A 7?
Here, I want to weigh in. This is why I'm going to weigh in that this might be my favorite race that I've watched since I became a Formula One fan, just period, is we always talk about, oh, this car is better suited for this track. This team is going to be better here. This is the first time, and we saw it specifically with Max Verstappen, where we saw how the setup of a car actually makes a huge difference because Red Bull and Ferrari both admitted to having lower downforce setups. Shout out Low Downforce. But that means faster on straights but less grip because they weren't predicting a rainy race. They said 20% chance, something like that. And so when it becomes rainy, you see Max, who basically sets up his car really well for a dry race and for qualifying, dominates qualifying, takes pole. He's sliding all over the place, runs off the track, winds up spinning out on a restart. But this was the first race where I think because not just that it was a rainy race, but an unexpected rainy race, where it wasn't just, strategy was super important, but it was also how you set your car up made a massive difference. And it was so visible because you saw Max Verstappen drifting around corners while other cars were gripping a lot easier. So that made it extra cool to me that it was everybody, pit wall, mechanics, drivers, everybody had to be on their A game to deliver a result. And there were some pretty legendary results, which we will talk about in a little bit, but we haven't gotten to Matt yet and his rating.
Oh, yeah. So I went kind of in the middle of y'all. Josh, you made some good points about just the number of laps that we spent just waiting for the safety car to go back in. And then, of course, as soon as it goes back in, it comes back out. I still think that with all of that, I give it an 8.5. Chaotic race. And I just love seeing everyone just jump up and down the table. It was incredible to see that a driver would go from P1 to P10 to P4 to P12 and just back and forth and back and forth. So especially for the newer fans, you lost out a little bit on some more racing laps.
I'd like to chime in on one more thing because I thought it was really fun how right at the beginning, right once they did that formation lap, there were quite a few cars that decided, hey, I'm going to switch to the dry tires, get off of intermediates. We think it's fine. And they start racing again at the now back. They forfeited their spot. Now they're starting from the pit lanes. And that strategy just fucked those guys. It was just not a good choice. But it could have been a good choice if it had rained maybe
it was very close to working
later. That was the crazy part, is that the number of laps they had in dry conditions, then the rain came in, and they just couldn't get out of the back. And that really kind of set up everyone in the midfield to kind of go up a little bit. And then with crashes, we just saw this top 10 that was so unpredictable. No one could have guessed this. And whoever did probably won a shit ton of money. And like that just to me made it very exciting how we were cheering for people who were typically never cheering for. And I loved that. That like makes it very special to me.
I mean, you said unpredictable. I know Josh is right about to get into it with race recap, so I got to get ahead of it. Unpredictable is, and the storyline I think that we all agree was the highlight of the weekend, is Nico Hulkenberg in a kick Sauber goes from P19 to P3, but it's not just that. It is Nico Hulkenberg's first podium in 239 races. He had destroyed that record of most races before podium. He's been in the sport since 2010. He's 37 years old. I pulled up, he is the oldest first podium earner since the 1973 Spanish Grand Prix. I mean, I was biased, but I feel like when Lando won his first race, he got a lot of celebration from the whole grid. The whole grid, same thing here, was all over Nico Hulkenberg. It was so awesome. It was feel good. As a Lando fan, as a McLaren fan, Nico Hulkenberg P3 to me was far more exciting than Lando winning his home race because it was just that special. It felt like
Mercedes gave them champagne.
Moment.
That was my favorite.
They
sent over champagne because they didn't have any to celebrate. They didn't even think they would ever get to that point. They're in the worst car. It was crazy.
Well, one other note, I am going to do some research as to how the heck they are so accurate with the weather readings. My brother and I were watching the race, and he was like, "Man, how do they know that like in like 7.5 laps, the western side of the track is going to experience moderate rain?" Like,
fun fact.
I got some research to do.
All the teams are responsible. All the teams are responsible for their own weather forecasting, which I think is super cool.
That is cool. Anyways, to get into the race recap, J9, as you mentioned, some people before the race even started went into the pits, switched to slick tires before the race start. One of those was Franco Colapinto, who, when he went to box, his car got stuck in second gear. He never came out, so he actually didn't even end up starting the race. Terrible for him. And so only 19 drivers started the race. Hulkenberg, like we mentioned, in last, finished third. Lando won the race. Oscar in second. McLaren 1-2, as always. Nico, as we said, Lewis behind him. Max Verstappen fifth. Pierre Gasly up into sixth. Lance Stroll, historically great in the wet, did wonderful again to get seventh. Alexander Albon behind him in eighth. Fernando Alonso ninth. George Russell a single point in 10th, which is a big disappointment for Mercedes because Kimi Antonelli also did not finish for Mercedes. Both Racing Bulls also didn't finish. They crashed out, and so did Gabriel Bortoleto for Kick Sauber. So highs and lows within Kick Sauber this weekend. But it was kind of just an all-around, like, names were everywhere you did not expect them to be. Cars were banging up against each other, spinning out everywhere. Because of the rain, changing conditions, it was impossible to see. Yuki had a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. He got 1 penalty point. Oscar Piastri, this is quite controversial, got a 10-second penalty for a safety car infringement, and he got 4 points on his license. Is that right? Maybe
2 points on his license.
He has 4 total now, I think. And so that penalty kind of gave Lando the win. And
I would say something that was not controversial.
I mean,
you said everyone, it was unexpected where people were on the grid. I don't know about you, but I expected Tsunoda to be last because he's just sucking, and then he was last. So I feel like I felt pretty good about that one, actually. Yeah.
Shout out. Well, I know, Josh, you're hinting at the Oscar Piastri penalty. So let's get right into the track takes. And my track take is whether you think it was a harsh penalty or deserving penalty, ultimately, I think it was just a mistake by Oscar. I think the risk far outweighed the reward. And I think that when people talk about, like, oh, Lando was gifted the win, or, something like, oh, like, a lot of people on the internet saying British bias from the FIA for giving a penalty like that because George didn't get one for a safety car infringement a couple races ago. I think you can boil all of that down. The penalty happened. But to me, it's just unnecessary from Oscar. And we talk about the pressure and the expectation. Here's the thing, right? Max, we know, is struggling with his setup. Like, I don't think Oscar has to worry about Max behind him. And if anything, like, the race changed when Max spun out and Lando was right behind him, because then all of a sudden Oscar had an equal car behind him. But he slams on the brakes. The FIA deems it egregiously, which you look at the telemetry data. In like 140 meters, he brakes over 100 miles an hour. If you're going to compare it to the George Russell incident in Canada, he brakes twice as hard. But the thing is, if Max doesn't take avoiding action, Max could have just driven into the back of Oscar there, taken him out of the race, which that to me is what stood out of like Oscar didn't need to do that. And if anything, put himself at more risk than he needed to by even attempting something like that.
I actually don't blame Oscar here because he did the exact same thing on the first safety car like 2 laps before. And the pit wall didn't tell him like, hey, don't do that. Like that was an issue. Like Max didn't almost run into the back of him then. I think if something had gone wrong the first time, the pit wall would have told him, hey, don't do that. You're under investigation. The FIA didn't bring anything up. The pit wall didn't bring anything up. And then he does the exact same thing 2 laps later, whenever it is. And he gets a very harsh penalty for it. And I understand why they gave it because they said it was unsafe. But I feel like if he did it twice and they didn't mention the first one at all in penalizing the second one.
I think that's the bigger infringement is the FIA's inconsistency that we see both during the race and like
if you were to just isolate this incident and forget about the others, you could see like very poor visibility of cars directly behind you, and all of them were so bunched up together that it wouldn't have just been Max hitting Oscar. It could have been way more cars. And I think that when you look at it, you're just questioning, why did you brake so hard and why? Like it didn't make full sense. And for Verstappen to just completely try to swerve around and then they restarted and then he spins out, it was like something just seemed fishy, but I don't think he did it on purpose. And I think the purpose and intent, I could say Oscar didn't purposely try to do that to get Max to run into the back of him and like then it's on Max and like whatever it may be. Like I don't think he did it egregiously. I think it was just an egregious act, but he didn't have the intent to do that. It was just like it just so happened to like he braked too hard and circumstances then followed.
Well, I mean, the rules say, right, you can't drive erratically behind the safety car. And to be honest, it was interesting. They brought up telemetry. They're interrogating Zach Brown like after the penalty happened and just like asking him all these questions. He's like, we're trying to figure it out. They wouldn't leave him alone. But Ben, as far as this, your numbers go, the telemetry then would show, I mean, there's just no reason that like how do you justify needing to brake so hard, right?
Well, that's my biggest thing is like he just didn't need to do it. Like he brakes normally.
He did.
What?
I think he was trying to set himself up to get the good restart because they had just called the safety car in right before he broke. He wanted to get the restart at that exact part of the track, which is why he did the exact same thing 2 laps earlier at the other safety car restart. Because once you're already on the straight, then you kind of lose your advantage you have of like picking your time, and you'd have to wait until the next corner and all that. So he wanted to get to his spot, and based on the timing of when they called that safety car, I feel like he felt he needed to brake to give himself enough space.
But you can't do that if there's not enough space
to be able to take off.
So again, it's on him. So again, I got to give him the blame for it, although he wasn't trying to be unsafe. But bro, you already passed it. Sucks. You're in a fast car. Just go. You know,
I would say I think Matt hit it spot on, like the late safety car, but also it's like he didn't need to brake that hard.
Yeah, I won't disagree there.
Yeah,
like the idea is brake, but don't brake that hard.
Yeah. Well,
all right,
I was gonna say your track take was the guy leading the race. Mine is for the guy that didn't even start the race. Franco Colapinto, not even his fault, didn't start the race, but the rumors are absolutely swirling. I think Franco Colapinto is going to have maybe one more race in Alpine before either Jack Doohan goes in, or I've heard rumors that Valtteri Bottas may be on the move to Alpine from Mercedes as the reserve driver. So I think one of those two guys is going to replace Colapinto after the next race.
I'm green flagging this. Get him the fuck out of there, because this dude stinks. I was a huge supporter of Jack Doohan at the beginning of the year, just because I liked on F1 TV. Like, he seemed like a good guy. He gave good analysis before and after races with the commentary team, and I thought he wasn't given a fair shot. And if anything, Colapinto is only proving that Jack Doohan's poor results weren't Jack Doohan's fault. That car stunk. Colapinto's no better. And then you can argue, okay, maybe Colapinto brings in more money, but at some point you got to start pushing the team forward, because even with Pierre Gasly's P6, they're still in dead last.
I don't know. I feel like maybe Jack Doohan should just stay in broadcasting and Colapinto should get out, and then even Valtteri Bottas, love the guy. Let's just bring in someone new. Why do we have to have this? I don't know. Maybe
Who are you going to bring in?
Someone else.
I guess Paul Aaron.
F2.
Well,
give another rookie a shot.
Yeah, I don't know the rules off the top of my head, so it's something it would be something I need to look into. But I mean, there's plenty of drivers in F2 sitting waiting for a spot, right?
So bring back Ricardo.
Although we'll talk about it a bit more. There you go. Exactly.
I saw that too, and that's sad. But I also like him when he does, like, not broadcasting, but when he does interviews. It's nice. It's nice commentary.
Hey, we did get a post race shoey though, so the Daniel Ricciardo spirit does live on.
There you go. But Josh, I green flag that as well. I mean, it's just it's not an ideal situation at Alpine, and maybe they're finding out that it's not the driver necessarily, or maybe it's not one specific driver.
Yeah.
Matt, let's stick with you. How about your track take?
Okay, so after the last 4 races, my take is that Sauber is going to be the top midfield team of this year, which is incredible after having gone last year. I mean, they're horrible, miserable. And now they've gotten more points in the last 4 races than Red Bull has. I mean, sorry, Nico himself has gotten more points than Red Bull has. And I see both Nico's momentum and Stake's morale changing. I'm still a little bit of a yellow flag on it myself because it's Sauber, but I'm hopeful that this is a turning point for them and for Nico specifically.
I'm going to green flag it. They're only 18 points behind Williams. Williams has had tons of reliability and just random bad luck happening to them throughout most of this season already. So yeah, I totally could see it, which is just a huge turnaround because I think I expected them to be the worst team this year. Kick Sauber coming into the year.
I'm also green flagging that. I think that, and I'll go into my track take because I feel pretty passionate about this. I don't think Verstappen's going to stay at Red Bull. I think that this was one of those races where he needed the right car. He didn't get the right car. The results weren't in his favor. And I don't believe that it'll fully be his idea. I think that it'll be definitely driven by his father. But I don't think Red Bull's giving him what he wants, and he's that good of a driver to kind of go pick and choose what he wants. I think, Russell said he feels very confident that he's going to get the contract and it's going to be him and Kimi again. But I think that Mercedes could be eyeing Verstappen, but that doesn't rule out other teams as well. I don't think he's going to go to Cadillac. That doesn't really make sense. But I think he's a little done with what the team is giving him right now, and inconsistency, and then not having Yuki as a solid partner to get any points. It's just like him. Like, the team is just him. And I would be over that. Like, I would be really frustrated. And so I think it's his time. I think this is his last year here.
I'll green flag that. Hopefully, Zach Brown's not going to let him go to McLaren. But hey, it'd be cool to see him at Ferrari. It'd be cool to see him at Mercedes.
Ferrari,
Ferrari's not really an open spot. He doesn't have an open spot.
Or Hamilton?
No, it's got to be Mercedes. It's got to be Mercedes, really, to be honest. And it sucks for George, but I think their chips are on Kimi. So
George is going to Red Bull next year. They're going to swap.
I'm going to green flag this, but I don't think it's going to be a driver swap. I think part of the holdup in why George Russell hasn't signed a deal with Mercedes yet is, one, I think Toto, the team principal for Mercedes, is trying to court Max Verstappen, who wouldn't want 4-time world champion, probably an equal machinery, the best driver on the grid, probably not even that close. But I think that this kind of ongoing negotiation period is like telling for George that Mercedes isn't ready to throw in all the chips in his basket. And so I actually think that if Cadillac has the money for it, this is George Russell's chance for Cadillac to be like, hey, this is your team from the get-go. We will build this team around you from the ground up. I know all of us here are in Atlanta. When we got Atlanta United, we got a head coach who used to coach at Barcelona. He used to coach the Argentinian national team, was coaching way above what the MLS was, but he was given the opportunity to kind of design this project. And I think George is only going to have this chance this cycle because Cadillac is new. I would say Audi would have been another good shout, but I think they feel even better now that Kick Sauber's looking good, now that Nico Hulkenberg is still showing great form and Gabby Bortoleto, is showing signs. But I can't also imagine George Russell wants anything to do with Max Verstappen as a teammate or working with Red Bull and the comments over the years that Christian Horner has made, that Helmut Marko has made. I think this is George's one and only chance to kind of create his own legacy at a new team.
I like that. I just don't see him going to Cadillac. I feel like Cadillac, all the rumors are surrounding old drivers to get experience, and maybe it's just because George has been so locked in on Mercedes that I feel like nobody has even thought of that. But that would be crazy.
If I'm not mistaken, Cadillac had like shortlisted him before the season, and I imagine when he started off great, when there weren't these rumors, they were like, "This ain't happening." But I think the door is opening again, and like J9, like you said, like Max can only put up with so many bad performances in a row, especially when it's bad car setup, especially when it's bad pit stops, bad tire strategy. And I think that as soon as he gets a couple more glimpses of, hey, maybe the engine that Red Bull is designing for the first time next year isn't all that great, then why not jump ship?
It would be hilarious to see Max and Checo reunite at Cadillac. The problems we're mentioning right now wouldn't line up for that. But no, there's a lot of stuff to watch for coming up in just the driver market. So yeah, great take.
But we're looking forward. We're taking our guesses going forward. But we got to put a bow on this incredible race weekend. Of course, we have our tops and our flops. I imagine Nico Hulkenberg is quite high on everybody's top board. So if anybody wants to jump on that first or add anything that hasn't been said yet, I mean, it's just one of the great moments of the sport. So I feel like it just deserves to be celebrated. To me, it's the highlight of the weekend. It's probably the highlight of the season. I made a note in my notes that, we got Lando's first win last year, and we also got Charles winning the Monaco Grand Prix. And I think those were kind of inseparable as like, these are just great moments of the sport. The whole grid was happy. It felt like the sport came together. This felt exactly like that.
So is that your top? Did you just take it right there?
Sure.
You got it.
Sure. That's my top. I'll round it out easy. We'll keep it moving. Josh, jump right in behind me. Who's your top?
I was going to take Nico, but I will go with Pierre Gasly because what a race. Best finish of the season so far for Alpine. It's one of these things, just rain makes crazy races. He kept it together. He had a pretty good race. He was battling with Verstappen at the end, battled with Stroll a little bit throughout. And all around great for Pierre.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a similar note there. And I have Aston Martin as my top. Stroll and Alonso, like if I'm looking at a race and I'm like, oh my gosh, Stroll, like that's a good race because something crazy has happened if I'm cheering for Lance Stroll. And that was such a good race. I was very, very impressed with his driving there. I felt bad for the guy as you're rounding, you're right behind Hulkenberg. You're then behind Hamilton and Verstappen and Gasly. So, you had some really strong drivers there, but to really keep up with them, super proud of you, Lance. That was huge. And Alonso getting ninth, like that's some solid points for your team right there. You had a really good weekend. You capitalized on a lot of DNFs and a lot of craziness and a lot of tire strategy. Y'all did so well. So shout out Aston Martin.
Alonso was pissed in P9, though. He was not happy. He obviously qualified a lot better than Lance. But who would have thought halfway through the race that we would have been watching the Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg battle for the podium? I mean, it really was that crazy.
Oh, yeah. And since mine, I had some ideas that I'll try and be a little bit unique here. I'm going to say, even though my hot take did not hit, it was very close, like one place. Give it up to the hometown drivers and hometown teams here. I think that there's a lot of pressure that comes with driving at your home race, and to see 4 Brits in the top 11. Yes, it may not be too outstanding, but there were so many points in the race where I just thought it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And maybe Behrman I can call out as being a driver who is just showing signs of improvement, and I'm really happy for him. But he's got to keep up the momentum. Maybe they'll make my hot take come true for another track.
I'm going to bounce that right into my flop. I'll acknowledge Ollie Behrman, but my flop is the rookies, because Ollie Behrman was the only rookie that actually finished the race. He still managed to crash into his teammate. That's how we got the beautiful synchronized spinning at the end of the race with the 2 Haas cars. I'm sure their mechanics, their team principal aren't thrilled. But I do want to put this out there before we bash on all the other rookies. Keep an eye on Ollie Behrman for one of the next wet weather specialists. Finished in the points, I believe, in Australia. Finished in this race as the only rookie. Also made it to the end of the race at Brazil last year, where people were also crashing left and right in crazy conditions. So keep an eye on him. But also keep an eye on everybody else, because it might be Isaac Hadjar driving into the back of Kimi Antonelli. We already talked about Franco Colapinto not even really getting a proper start of this race. And then Gabby Bortoletto also crashing out. It really felt, I mean, the 2 main rain races this year, the first one where the rookies were also mostly abysmal, and then this one, rookies also pretty abysmal, that it's just a learning experience. Especially the British Grand Prix gets treated like no other, especially this year, the 75th anniversary of the original Formula One race, the British Grand Prix. Like Matt said, most of the teams, other than Ferrari and technically Sauber and VCarb, are pretty much, British teams. And so I guess Haas, American, Italian a little bit, but majority of the grid, British-based teams, it comes with pressure. It comes with more media commitments. It turns into a longer week. So they'll learn from it, but definitely not a good showing.
I wanted to sweep this under the rug, but my flop is going to be Charles Leclerc. What an abysmal race. I was hoping we wouldn't talk about it the entire episode. But he was one of the guys that pitted before the race start onto slick tires. It didn't work out. It didn't work out in part when they originally pitted. I was like, oh, this is a great idea, because now you won't have to worry about double stacking Lewis and Charles at the same time when they'll come in, because they were paired next to each other on the grid. But then we had so many safety cars, and there was just no point in. There's no way for Charles to climb his way up because the rain kept falling, and he had to eventually pit again. Spun because he couldn't see. He got water in the visor. He drove through the gravel.
Must be the water.
The grass. Ferrari's a clown show. Charles had maybe one of his worst races ever, and it's just not good as a Ferrari fan.
I talked about Max having the wrong setup earlier. I didn't realize until reading some of the team comments after the race that Ferrari also went for a poor setup, because we also saw George Russell gambled on the early softs. He started 4th, Charles started 6th, and then George makes it back up into 10th and had some fights with Hamilton and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you said, Leclerc, nowhere to be found. Never was really competing in this one.
Bumped with signs too.
So, you mentioned setups. I think this was a tough weekend for Mercedes. I don't see this being like a track take, like, hey, Mercedes is going to have trouble going forward, but this was just not their race. And, obviously there's a chink in Max's armor, but Mercedes, it was tough to see both drivers not really performing as well as you'd like to see them.
I mean, we even got the great radio where George asked at the end of the race if he could switch onto slicks, and they're like, we want to take good risks, but we don't want to be suicidal. Next lap, George is like, let's go for the slicks. Immediately does a beautiful 720 through Maggots and Beckett's. So Oh yeah, really just a rough
and
one.
I think
start
my
to finish.
flop isn't really a flop. It's more just like a depression, like a sadness, lots of tears, because I was really hoping. I was so torn. Nico Hülkenberg gets third and gets his first podium ever, or Hamilton gets it on the podium and like for the 13th year in a row. No, he's gotten it
14th,
for
I think.
12
like
years.
220th podium or something. Or 200.
Oh, I thought he had already done 13.
It was 12, but there were 2 Grand Prix at Silverstone during
Okay, so
COVID
13.
because of the altered schedule. So one of them technically
It was
wasn't
the
the British Grand Prix,
non-British Grand Prix,
13
but
straight
British at the
podiums
same time.
in Silverstone.
It was the England Grand Prix. I was really, really sad to not see him get on the podium. I think he's really just not had his best year. And I've talked a lot about it on here of like, once you move to a new team, it's not necessarily your driving skills. It's your driving skills paired with a new car and a new team and a new strategy and all the things that come with that. That it's not just as simple like I'm going to get in a new car, like I'm going from my Mercedes on the road and driving a Toyota Camry. That would be okay, kind of similar, you know. This is just completely different. And I was sad for him. And he was so excited to go to Ferrari at the beginning of the season. And I feel like now he's like, damn it. I'm not in the car. I'm not with the team that's going to get me there. And I think it was really sad for him because he was almost there. Like he almost got past Hülkenberg and then he just kept going back and back and back.
Throughout all of the practices for this race, and even in qualifying until literally the last corner, Lewis had been incredible this entire weekend. I think he's starting to feel more comfortable in the car. I think just the conditions in the race were really the struggle for him. And hopefully,
I imagine he still takes away a couple good things. I mean, he's now out-qualified Charles 3 of the last 4 races.
But that's
obviously
not podium
strategy
for the
comes into play.
14th time.
But it is true. I will say I think most of the world is happy that Nico Hülkenberg was able to hold him off, even in DRS at one point. But you gave me the perfect segue because we always wrap up with the Predictors Championship updates. And I am here to argue that my hot take came true. Because my hot take was Ferrari strategy would cost them a podium. And I think that Lewis could have been on the podium if they made a better strategy decision onto slick tires at the end of this race. So I went full nerd mode as I did. I looked at all of the in-detail lap analysis, pulled up every single timed lap from every single driver. And here is what I can tell you. Here is what I have compiled. After both Nico and Lewis's final pit stops and out laps, in the remaining laps, Lewis was faster by 2.8 seconds. The gap from Lewis behind Nico, but going into the pits, was 2.5 seconds. So he was faster. We know DRS was enabled at the end. But for me, the kicker was that by Lewis pitting 1 lap before Nico Hülkenberg, he pitted onto slicks too early. We saw on the broadcast that he spun out, and I looked at the data. He wound up finishing 5 seconds behind Nico Hülkenberg, but he lost 8.513 seconds on his outlap relative to Nico Hülkenberg's outlap. If he waits the extra lap, he might not spin out. He doesn't lose all that time. He has DRS, and I'm not saying I would have wanted this because I wanted Nico Hülkenberg to get his podium. He deserved it, but it was on the cards for Ferrari if they get that final pit stop correct on the correct lap.
No, because you make the assumption that he might not have spun out. No, that's like, what if the guy had caught the ball? Well, he didn't, and he could have not the other time too.
I don't think
if Stroll crashed out, my hot take would have come true.
I think the semantics here are interesting because the way of you saying Ferrari loses a podium because of strategy, it makes it feel like they were in the podium position and then lost out because of it.
Yeah.
Versus hypothetically not getting it. You know what I mean?
He had been in third, then pitted, then Hülkenberg took over. Yeah, you're right, Josh. Ben, get out of here.
Yeah.
No points for you. Next.
I was kind of joking around before, but I think that Ben, it was just tough because it's hard to quantify that. It's just hard to it's hard to say exactly. But no, you did good research. I just think that
I like your data.
I'd be willing to give you a point instead of 3.
I mean, I definitely think that, and again, I'm not saying like it was Ferrari clown show. I think they botched Charles's strategy way worse. I think Mercedes got George's strategy way worse than Ferrari did. But I'm also not going to pretend, I'll kind of go against myself here. I'm not going to pretend like it was easy for any of the pit walls. Getting that lap exactly perfect, as we proved, was extremely difficult. I know we didn't talk about Lando winning a ton. I thought it was awesome to see, obviously. He had said earlier in the week that he would trade all of his other wins for this one. But if you look at the track, if you look at the results, the two people who like never ran wide the entire race were Lando Norris and Nico Hülkenberg. And I'm not going to pretend like Lando had a masterclass drive. Like, it just happened to be. We've talked about it before. Like, luck comes to people who put themselves in positions to get it. Nico Hülkenberg, I'm telling you, if George Russell and Charles Leclerc don't early pit for slicks at the beginning of the race, Nico's not getting that podium. If Max doesn't spin out, Nico's not getting that podium. And I'm not saying that...
But it's also really easy to drive when no one's in front of you.
He set himself up to be slotted in. If the guy in third is going to get disqualified, you put yourself that luck in fourth, right? And you have to work for that. So I get it. No, I think that you're right. It's 100%
true. I mean, Sauber has even said, dry race, we ain't getting the podium. It's certainly circumstantial. It's one of those things where, like, we talk about Ollie Behrman being the only rookie. Like, sometimes just making it to the end of the race is enough. I mean, Lance Stroll lost 4 positions, like, in the last 10 laps or so of the race, but he's still pulling in a P7. Huge points for Aston Martin, moving up the constructors. Kick Sauber, 1 third place. They go from P9 to P6 in the Constructors' Championship. Sometimes it's not about having the greatest performance. Sometimes it's just having a better performance than everyone around you.
Well, I did not have a great performance relative to everybody around me because I got 0 points in the predictions this week. I didn't get a single thing right, even though I'm dominant leading the pack. First time I think that's happened to me all year. Anyways, Ben and Matt, you both predicted Lando Norris as the winner. And J9, you got your hot take of 3 drivers not finishing the race.
Yeah, I know.
You
I was
that like
super
5 laps into the race, by the way.
Yeah. Matt, you were very close, as you mentioned, on all of the British drivers scoring points, but unfortunately, Ollie Behrman missed out. And I said kick Sauber back in the double points, and Bortoletto crashed out. But Hülkenberg, there he is. I knew kick Sauber would have a good week.
Yeah, even if he earned 2x the normal amount of points for kick Sauber. But
yeah, so tough week, but good predictions all around. J9, you have 19 points behind me with 27. Matt, you're behind her with 17. And Ben, sorry about not getting your hot take, but you still have 13 points.
Hey, it was worth a shot. I had
still
fun.
Half the season left.
I had fun doing the math, and one final little math for you. And I think that, people talk about last year, great season, 7 different winners. This year, some people say, oh, you get the McLarens, but it hasn't really lived up to this. Leave you with this. Now is the best time to get into Formula One. With Pierre Gasly's P6 finish, Alpine moves up to 19 points, still in last place, but they now have the most points of a last place team in Formula One history in the points era, and Silverstone was the halfway mark through the season. The previous best last place finish was 12 points. We are well past that. So buckle up for the back half of this season. It is as competitive as it's ever been. Kick Sauber has admitted, Williams has admitted, a lot of their research, a lot of their development is going already into next year, which means that the midfield battles are going to stay tight. The Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, McLaren battle for the championship is going to stay tight. And as Jane and I mentioned earlier, we've got some driver market to keep our eyes on. Max, is he moving? George, is he going to have to move? Is Franco Colapinto going to make it to the end of the season? You will just have to stay tuned to find out. We got a little bit of time off. It is not technically summer break, but we've got a few weeks. before our next race in Spa in Belgium. It's another classic. You won't want to miss this. We will obviously get you ready with our brand new set of predictions for that race. But until then, everybody, stay speedy. Goodbye.